sources of those electricity sources that the company is making and putting to use in their company. How much coal are they using? How many natural resources are getting impacting during the operations of the company? How is their impact on employees, communities, consumers? And also coming back onto the governance, which is more around the transparency and comprehensiveness of information given by the company. This topic has assumed a lot of importance in recent years, so much so that there are a lot of investors who refuse to invest in companies who are not putting focus on sustainable growth and sustainability. Now, in light of this, while there are accounting standards that you might have heard are prescribed for the financial statements, likewise for ESG reporting, now SEBI has come out with sustainability standards, and that is called BSRS reporting. Now, which is Business Responsibility and Sustainability Report. Now, these are disclosures which globally have attained a lot of importance. And if I talk about India, these standards have already been prescribed by SEBI, being prescribed by the ICAI as well. For 21-22, the year gone by, these were recommendatory in nature, voluntary, and companies could adopt. However, for 22-23, the year that we currently are in, these are mandatory, not for all the entities, but the top 1,000 listed entities by market capitalization on the exchanges. These are mandatory. Just to give you a perspective on this, in India, most listed companies, the larger companies particularly, follow a March year end, which is 31st of March would be their year end. After 31st of March, you are required to hold an annual general meeting of your shareholders within 6 months of the year end, which means that by 30th September, all listed entities are required to hold a AGM. An annual report is mandatorily required to be given to the shareholders 21 days in advance before the AGM, so that the shareholders can come prepared and ask their company and the directors if they have any questions on the operations of the company. So if I talk about the current reporting and these new standards, 31st March 23 is when these would be applicable, and the annual reports that you would see for next year, these are mandatory for the top companies by capitalization. Even currently, and these annual reports are public information. So if you go to listed entities website, there is an investor relations section there. And over there, you can find annual report of that entity, not just for the current year, but for the prior years as well. And this is there and required for all the listed entities in the country. Now, since this is public information, if you want to look at sustainability reporting, companies like HUL, Hindustan Unilever, ITC, Infosys, even though this is not mandatory, they are still reporting under the ESG standards, because this is required and accepted more globally than the current standards. Now, what are these standards that we are talking about, and how these would impact the reporting that you would see in the coming years? Now, there are 9 pillars of this particular reporting. The 9 pillars are: the first one is around ethics and transparency, which is more around the business practices of the company. Second one is around the goods and services and whether those are sustainable or not. I mean, what is sustainability? Sustainability is the product that you are manufacturing. Is it something that can be done given the depletion of natural resources? A very common example that you would hear and which is impacting a lot of us is, say for example, denim's trousers that we use, that requires a lot of water to create those clothing. So is that a sustainable product going forward 20 years down the line when the natural resources would be constrained? The answer might be no. So some companies might say that denims as a business is not a sustainable business. So sustainability of your product and how do you intend to innovate your product is a requirement that would be given out in the annual report. Third one is around well-being of the employees. Fourth, around your responsiveness to all the stakeholders. And stakeholders would not only be the people who are interacting with the company, this would be public at large, this would be environment, this would be the regulator, lenders, and future prospective vendors and customers of the company also. Next is around whether the company respects the human rights and how does it promote human rights. Such kind of reporting needs to come out in the annual report. Next is on the overall environment of the company, public and regulatory policy of the company. How is company supporting equitable development around diversity and inclusiveness is required to be reported. And then towards the end, you have to give how are you giving value to your customers in terms of a long-term value. That is also required to be reported by the larger entities. Moving further, one has to report on the 4 aspects. I'll cover all 4 of them together because these are interrelated. The first one is around corporate governance, which is again a term that had a lot, the way you have importance around ESG today, corporate governance had importance about 15-20 years ago when Enron and Lehman Brothers and some of those disasters happened. Now, corporate governance essentially means the ethics of the company, the transparency of the company, the independence of the company, and what is the emphasis company is putting on the level and comprehensiveness of disclosures that they are giving out. That is, all of that is coming out in corporate governance. And in terms of compliance, the companies are also required to take a certificate from their auditor and give out in the annual report. So while one is reading an annual report, one can look at whether the company is compliant in terms of all reporting requirements of corporate governance or not. And that can be taken in the form of the certificate which is there in the annual report. Then there is an auditor's report. And in India, auditor's report is actually divided into 3 parts. The main auditor report, which is required as per the Companies Act. Then there is a CARO form, which is a long form report of about 45-50 questions that the auditor is required to answer on behalf of the company. And then there is a report on internal control over financial reporting, which is the company's reporting framework and the control framework that exists in the company. So the auditor is required to comment on all these 3, and all these 3 form a part of the annual report which is available. The audit report is then followed by the financial statements of the company. The financial statements have the balance sheet, profit and loss account, cash flows, and the related schedules, which are prepared under the generally accepted accounting principles in the country. In India, we have 2 sets of standards. We have Ind AS, which is applicable to larger entities wherein the net worth is more than 250 crores. And we have IGAAP, which is applicable to rest of the entities. So these financial statements have to be prepared under these accounting standards, and these essentially give, the balance sheet gives you the as-at position for a particular date, which is the balance sheet date, 31st of March, and profit and loss is the result of operations over the last 1 year with a year comparative given as to whether the company has incurred losses or they have earned profits in the year, what are the taxes they have paid, and then there are detailed schedules that follow which give more details about the financial positions and operations of the company. This is followed by notes to accounts, which is further details about the financial position of the company. It gives out details about things like contingent liabilities, key events that have occurred during the year, all the events and things that have happened in a company which have a financial implication or could have a financial implication in future are given in notes to accounts, which is there for better understanding. Just as annual report has broader guidelines, the financial statements also have broader guidelines so that while an investor, current or prospective, is looking at the financial information, they can safely presume that if they are looking at two balance sheets, those are comparable and that information is readily available in the annual report. So to conclude, if I were to say what are the things that are covered in an annual report, you have the chairperson statement, the CEO statement, corporate information, information about ESG, information about the BSRS standards, the financial statements, corporate governance, auditors' reports, and notes to accounts. So these are must-haves in an annual report, which you would find in all the companies. And when I say must-haves, because essentially one needs to do benchmarking also. So if I as a user, I want to compare two entities, the basic information has to be present in each annual report so that these are comparable. And the balance, the storytelling, can be in any form which we had discussed earlier, which could be in the form of the ideology of the company, the future of the company, the product line of the company, and it could be in any other manner. Now, we would come on to who are the users of the annual report. Now, annual report has many users, and there are many stakeholders that are getting impacted by a company, and hence, if I talk about in terms of users, there would be many users. The first and the foremost who are waiting for an annual report with the most anticipation are the shareholders. Both existing and the potential investors look forward for an annual report to see the operations, the results, and how the company is projecting its future growth. For all the factors that we discussed a while ago, shareholders are really looking forward to an annual report and they become the key users for an annual report. Moving further, employees. People who are employed in a company also want to look at an annual report to see how their company is progressing. They might also be getting ESOPs, which is employee stock options, and they would want to know more about how those ESOPs and projections and forecasts of the company would impact their own emoluments, whether they want to continue in the company over a long period of time, and whether they want to join a company or not. So all these factors would be something that an employee or a prospective employee would want to look forward in an annual report. Next is customers. Customers or vendors, people who want to be associated with the company, whether on the buy side or on the sell side, would want to know more about the company, and hence they would want to have this information in the form of annual report. We'll continue discussing more about annual report after we'll take a break now for a couple of minutes, and we'll be back discussing more about the users of the annual report and also how to read an annual report. And we'll be back shortly. Thank you.
क्रिटिकल है बट वी आर ट्राइंग।
ये सब हुआ कैसे?
एक फोन आया था राजेश के पास। उसने कहा कि उनकी 1 करोड़ की लॉटरी निकली है और उसके लिए उसने बैंक डिटेल्स मांगी। राजेश ने सारी डिटेल्स दे दी। 1 घंटे के अंदर ही उनके बैंक अकाउंट से सारा पैसा साफ हो गया और वो यहाँ आ गए। हार्ट अटैक आया है।
देखा आपने, आपकी जरा सी असावधानी क्या कर सकती है। डिजिटल फ्रॉड करने वालों से सावधान रहें। अपनी बैंक डिटेल्स, अपना डेबिट या क्रेडिट कार्ड नंबर, एक्सपायरी डेट, सीवीवी, ओटीपी, पिन कभी किसी को ना बताएं। सावधान रहें, समझदार बने।
आईपीएफ अथॉरिटी द्वारा जनहित में जारी। हाँ जी सुरेश जी, रिटायरमेंट के बाद जो प्रोविडेंट फंड आएगा उसका क्या करेंगे?
कुछ खास प्लान नहीं है, पड़ा रहेगा बैंक में, ब्याज आता रहेगा और क्या।
सुरेश जी, बैंक से कितना ब्याज आएगा? एक नई स्कीम बताता हूँ, उसमें पैसे लगा दो, साल भर में दुगने बल्कि चौगुना हो जाएगा। हाँ बस कुछ नए मेंबर्स बनाने हैं।
नहीं नहीं सुरेश जी, इन सब फालतू चक्करों में मत पड़िए। कि नए मेंबर बनाना, रातों रात करोड़पति बनाना, ऐसे सपने दिखाने वाली स्कीम से बचकर रहें। आप लालच में आकर नहीं, समझदारी से निवेश करें। नए मेंबर बनाओ,